Chaldean Grammar, Chapter 10. We're going to talk about the imperative and the infinitive and adverbs. The imperative is a command. So when you're commanding somebody, if you want to tell somebody run or jump or do something, that's an imperative. And it says in Chaldean, it's the same as in any other language, to give an order or command. It's a very simple conjugation. And there's some slight variations in the weak verbs, but this is not a very hard part of the language. If you want to tell somebody do something, if you're speaking to a single person, you say would. If you're telling a group of people to do something, you say udu. So let's take a look at the pattern here. The root here is awith. So k'awith. What you do is you take the first two radicals, a and beth, and you add a o sound, and then you add the third radical, would. Then for the plural, you do the same thing, but you add an u at the end. That's basically it. Let's take this word, to take. The root is shaqal, shin, qop, lamad. You take the first two radicals, you put a o sound, and then the third radical, shqol. For the plural, shqulu. If you want to command somebody to sing, zmor. First radical, second radical, then o, then the third radical. Zmor, zmuru. Wad, udu, shqol, shqulu, zmor, zmuru. I just explain here, the pattern is clear, and an o is inserted between the second and third root letter for the singular, while for the plural, the u sound, the o sound changes to an u, and the same sound is placed at the end of the word. So, shqol, so that's this vowel here. It's o on this one, shqol. On this one, it's shqulu. So it is a different vowel. O becomes u, and then you add another u at the end. Od, udu, shqol, shqulu, zmor, zmuru. That's it. Let's look at some irregularities in weak verbs. Imperative conjugation of first alap. Ichol. So the root here is achel. This you add a hwasa, i, chol. Ichol. Plural is achlu. Ichol, achlu. Isor, usru. This is just an irregular pattern because of the weakness of that first radical. Ichol, achlu. Isor, usru. And so on with every verb that has a first alap. The alap is the first radical. Hollow verbs are more regular. Qum, qumu. Boz, buzu. So here you're noticing there is some difference here. Qum, qumu. Here it's boz. It's a different vowel, buzu. How do you know which one's which? Just learn it for each word as it comes out. You'll just be paying attention. Ask somebody who knows. You'll see it there. I don't think there's a very clear, easy pattern to say it's always u or o. But when you hear it, you'll recognize it. Qum, qumu, boz, buzu. There is a special form of this word qum. Sometimes you'll hear just people say qu. It's kind of like even more abbreviated. Qu. It's the imperative of qum, which means stand up. Third alap, weak verbs, have more variation. There's a special feminine singular for third alap, third weak verbs. So this is interesting. So if you want to tell somebody si, zi. If you want to tell a female si, ze. So there's a special feminine form only for third weak verbs. So zi, ze, if you're talking to a woman, zo, if you're speaking to a group of people. Zi, ze, zo. If you want to tell somebody to build, bni, if you're talking to one man. Bneh, if you're talking to one female. Bno, if you're talking to a group of people. Bni, bneh, bno. If you want to tell somebody be, like be something. Hui. If you want to say be a man. Hui gora. Sometimes people say posh gora, but this is actually a little bit more linguistically accurate. Hui gora. be a man. If you want to say be a woman, hoe bachta. Hui, hoe. If you want to say be to a group of people, ho, ho nashe, be people. Hui, hoe, ho. Bni, bne, bno. How do you tell somebody not to do something? It is not, you do not say larzi. That's not the way you say don't do something. The way you make a negative imperative is made by combining la with the subjunctive, the second person subjunctive studied in chapter 5. So if you want to say do not do, you say la odet, or la odat, or la odutun. So this literally, very, very, very literally means may you not do. May you not do. La odet, la odat, la odutun. However, this is the only way to make a negative imperative. If you want to tell somebody to not do something, or to not build, or to not see, or to not whatever, you have to use this form. You take la and you use the second person subjunctive. La odet, la odat, la odutun. You can make a strict subjunctive by taking the subjunctive and adding this particle should. I guess I should have put this back in an earlier chapter. So may I pull should garshan. Should garshan. Should garshit. This is, you already know this. This is just the subjunctive conjugation. And all that's new here is just this word should. And should just means should, like may I should pull. Let me pull, something like that. Okay. I'm pretty sure this is mentioned before, but here's the full conjugation if you want to see it. What is an infinitive? An infinitive is the name of the action. So if you want to take a verb and sort of turn it into a noun, and it can take the place of a noun, that's what the infinitive is. In English, there are actually two forms of the infinitive. One is doing or running or whatever. And you can also consider to run, the form to run, that's also considered an infinitive. Here's the basic form of the infinitive. So awith is the root. If you want to say doing, wada. Shaqal is the root. Shqalli is I took. Shaqlin is I am taking. If you want to just take, if you want to say, what are you doing right now? Taking. Shqala. This is the infinitive. Shqala. What are you doing right now? I'm singing. Zmara. Miwit ba'wada daha. What are you doing now? Iwin. Well, we'll talk about that in a second. Bizmara. So here's Zmara is singing. Ghzaya is seeing. Ikhala is eating. Qiyama is standing. These are all infinitives. They all take more or less the same form. Wada, Shqala, Zmara, Ghzaya, Ikhala, Qiyama. This is extremely important. Pay attention to this. The infinitive can be combined with the static to be verb. I just did it by accident, but I'll explain it now. Along with a beth to form a present progressive tense. This is very important. It's very common. We say this a lot in Chaldean. Iwin, you already know what Iwin means. It means I am. Iwin. B, grasha. So what do? You take this verb, I am, Iwin, Iwan, Iwit, Iwat, Ile, Ila. You already know this from several chapters ago. You take that and you combine it with the infinitive grasha, or whatever the word is that you're trying to say. Iwan, grasha. And then what we do to connect them is we put this beth in there. Iwan begrasha. It's almost as if to say, I am in the act of pulling. I am pulling. Iwan begrasha. And very often people will use this as if it's a regular present tense. So instead of saying garshan or k'odhin or k'katlin, they'll say Iwan begrasha. Iwan baqtala, Iwan baqraya, whatever it is. So let me read through this. Iwan bagrasha, Iwan bagrasha, Iwit bagrasha, Iwat bagrasha. Nothing has changed except for the verb Iwan. All of the infinitives remain in the same form. Okay, so I'm not going to read through the whole thing. A past progressive is made with the addition of the particle wa. This is also extremely important. So you already know Iwan wa means I was, and that can be shortened to winwa. That's a couple chapters ago. Winwa. So if you just take that form, winwa, you can say I was pulling. Winwa bagrasha. Winwa baqtala. Winwa baqraya. I was reading. And you can do it with all of these and with any verb. This works with every single verb. You put it into this form or into this form, and it means that. Okay. Finally, this is fairly rare. You don't hear people speaking like this, but you'll see it in written literature somewhat often. If you want to take an adverb, in English, the adverb is made by adding ly to an adjective. In Chaldean, you take it by forming the particle eth to the end of the word. So you take an adjective, mysterious, razanaya. In English, you say mysteriously. This ly is how you make an adverb. In Chaldean, you take razanaya and you say razanaith, mysteriously. Hakima is wise. Hakimaith is wisely. Shwiha is glorious. Shwihaith is gloriously, and so on with every adjective. I repeat, people don't usually speak that way. If you're sitting there talking to your uncle or something like that, and you say, oh, Hakimaith, like, he's probably going to like roll his eyes like, well, you're trying to be fancy or something. But I think people do recognize it mostly. It's definitely there in written literature, so it's good for you to be able to recognize it. All right. Here's some new verbs. Halik, halaka, to perish. Now you see, when we give a verb, we give the present tense, third person, masculine, halik, and then we give the infinitive. Halik, halaka. Why are we doing that? Because the infinitive is going to show you any hidden, like weak letters that are hidden inside the letter. Yade, ida'a. So this should show you ida'a. Okay. So let's go through. Halik, halaka, to perish. Chayat, chiyata, so. Hayan, hyana, to pity or have pity on somebody. Charu, chrawa, is to destroy or ruin. Sanq, snaqa, to require. Ale, alaya, to ascend. It's another word for ascend we learned earlier, asiq. So this is just a kind of a synonym of that. Fayet, fiata, to pass. Pasach, psacha, to rejoice. Yade, ida'a, to know. Yame, imaya, to vow or swear an oath. Yareth, iratha, to inherit. Kayil, yala, to measure. This is important. This is not the same as kale. Kale means to stop. Kayil means to measure. Mache, mchaya, to beat. Mate, mtaya, to arrive. Mane, mnaya, is to count, not bane, mane. Mashe, mshaya, to wipe. Could also mean to erase. Napaq, npaqa, to go out. There are other villages that will say palat, plata, to mean the same thing. Halik is, I already said that. Looks like there's a typo here. Chayat, we said happy. Okay, so there's some repetition here. Ignore this. Sorry. Pathil, pthala, to turn, like to face something. Qatip, qtapa, to pick, like to pick a fruit off of a tree. Rawe, rwaya, to grow. The same sound can mean something different. So rawe with a beth, with a softened beth, is to grow. Rawe with a wow means to get drunk. And they sound exactly the same, but they're spelled different, and there's a good reason to spell them differently. Ra'agish, actually, this is ragish, ragasha, or most people will pronounce this ra'ish, ra'asha. But I spell it with a gamal because that's the way it was spelled classically. Ra'ish, ra'asha. Rayiq, riyaqa is to spit. Ra'il, ra'ala is to shake. Shayib, shiapa is to rub. Shatiq, shtaqa is to be quiet. Taqal, tqala is to weigh something. Okay, and these are all repetitions, typos from up front. Okay, nouns. This is long. Okay. A pebble is bizqa. A stone is kepa. Kumra means high priest. It's a religious term. Qatta is a stick or a handle. Ruha is a spirit. Sultana is authority. Tana is a fig. Tanetha is a word or a saying. Some adjectives. Aminaya is perpetual, something that happens always. Aminaya. Sakhla is ignorant. Etanaya is ecclesial, churchy. Atira is rich. Psicha is happy. Fria is abundant. Fria. Qamaya is first. Qadmaya is first. Qadmaya or Qamaya. Rimzanaya is symbolic. Rashi'a is wicked. Shwiha is glorious. Shlihaya is apostolic. Tamnima is innocent. Let's look at some adverbs. Besima'ith is agreeably, deliciously. Gawana'ith is generally. Zaddiqa'ith is justly. Kullana'ith is entirely. Kma is how many. I think we've seen that before. And then bagrana'ith is bodily. However, you already know how to turn all these adjectives into adverbs if you want. Amina'ith, sakhla'ith, etana'ith, and so on. There's probably an exercise to do that. Okay, exercises: conjugate in the imperative infinitive, convert all the adjectives to adverbs. I thought so. Some nice translations, some active translation, and then write some sentences. And next week is some other special verbs, and we'll go on from there. See you then.